it's a bit harder to do, isn't it,
You're
Joe?
dead right.
But if you see at the back of the bridge there are the sluice gates.
Right.
And when they were built 150 years ago, they were the largest in the world.
In the world?
In the world, yes.
So you've USB pens inside here?
There's two inside
in
this section here, and they're vacuum packed and sealed inside.
You do realise by the time they're opened in, say, 100 years' time, that'll be ancient technology? I keep coming in to the centre, you know what I mean? Can I move it?
You
No,
can't.
I just
It's
snapped it
snapped.
actually.
And I stand and I look at it when and I think, yeah.
You don't become so proud of it you're reluctant to part with it, by any chance?
I was in the beginning, Joe, to be honest.
This is not important.
No, this piece isn't
Are you
important.
serious now about that?
Serious, yeah.
Because I would not let me near it.
No.
If this was going to be somebody's day spoilt.
No.
Or even a week's work spoilt. You sure?
I'm sure.
Do you want me to show you how to do first and then?
Yeah. This is the first time I've stood in one county and invited you to join me in another. Many of the place names we have in Ulster, as well as in the rest of Ireland as we know, are derived from physical features of the landscape. In fact, many are simply straightforward descriptions of such features, which can sound quite prosaic when you translate them from Irish into English. For example, the place that I'm in today takes its name from the submerged flat rock which enabled people to cross the river here for thousands of years before the bridge was built. In English translation, it would be called the forward mouth of the flagstone, which I suppose sounds intriguing enough. But how much more meaningful, evocative and inviting if I were to say to you, welcome to Belleek on the banks of the River Erne in County Fermanagh. The bridge that spans the River Erne at this point links two of the most beautiful counties in Ireland and crosses the border in the process. Anyone approaching from the Donegal side for the very first time is bound to get the impression that Fermanagh must be a very grand place indeed, for the first building to greet them has the cut stone facade of a large country manor house. Its air of grandeur is fitting enough though, because this is the home of the internationally renowned Belleek Pottery Works, established in 1857 by three men whose ambition it was to produce work of a quality that would rival the finest porcelain in the world, using local raw materials and the talents and skills of local people. The fortunes of the local population have ebbed and flowed with those of the pottery to a great extent, but the 21st century village of Belleek is a colourful, lively and welcoming market town, whose tree-lined main street slopes gently down to the river and preserves, effortlessly it seems, its ambience of rural charm, despite the constant flow of traffic, which is of course its commercial lifeblood. The tendency for most visitors is to plunge straight away into the history of the pottery and the opulent displays that chart its progress over the centuries. But I'm going to postpone that pleasure for a little while yet to take full advantage of the welcome that is symbolised under a tree and across the street from the factory, where, just at the end of the bridge, Joanne Cunningham invites me to sit a while and rest and take the weight off. Mind you, convincing though it looks, I did say it was symbolic. What is it actually made of? It is a stone.
Yes, limestone.
Limestone?
Yeah.
And it's all the way from Kilkenny?
It is. It was donated to us by McKeown Stone down in Kilkenny.
Right. And the artist?
He was Dublin based. It was an artist called Stephen Burke.
Right.
And I think he done a fantastic job for us. He was sent a drawing of a battered oil sofa, and that's exactly what we got back from him.
Yeah, well, it's brilliantly done, isn't it? I mean, because looking at it, I know it's stone, but it actually feels as if you could sit down there and it would sort of sink underneath your weight.
It is, and it's supposed to represent the village in that it's a welcome. You know, it's no battered sofa. The town will, you know, come in, sit down, take your picture, put your feet up, like, you know, and
yes.
Enjoy your visit and stay.
So it's homely and comfortable and inviting, and that's the kind of image you want to present for the town. Is that the idea?
Absolutely.
Right, right. Who had the idea in the first place of an old battered sofa?
That would be me. I'd be responsible for that.
Well, did it come to you in a blinding flash of inspiration, or what? How did it? How did it emerge out of your mind?
What happened was I worked for the local community association, Belleek and District Community Partnership, and we were on a networking visit to visit other villages and see what they do, yeah, and to learn from it. And we went to some other towns up along the border, and they all had little single chairs, and they were lovely. They were made out of sandstone, but they were very angular, and I thought that's a brilliant idea. But if I was doing it, I'd do a battered oil sofa.
A battered oil sofa.
And there it is.
You are. Well, he did a great job on it. I really, the texture and everything, and the way way the wee buttons are indented and all the rest of it.
I couldn't ask for anything more other than 2 armchairs and a coffee table.
You want a whole set now?
Absolutely. My ambition is to have the whole set.
All right. Well, listen, we're talking about it, but really what we should be doing is sitting on it, isn't that the case?
Absolutely.
Yes? And throw myself down here, as I say.
So as you can see, she came in 3 sections, and actually in here, in this section, is a time capsule for the village.
A time capsule?
A time capsule. We ran a wee project called The Way We Were, The Way We Are,
right,
and The Way We Will Be. And The Way We Were was history. So we put as much history as we could onto the time capsule, onto a USB pen.
Right.
Then we ran a project in the primary schools called The Way We Will Be,
right,
where the kids decided what they were going to be like in 50 years' time and what Belleek would be like in 50 years' time.
So you were asking them to look into the future, is that the idea?
Yeah, so they all done a picture describing their life. Some of them were quite interesting.
Is that right?
Yes, yes. And then The Way We Are is supposed to be the sofa.
Right,
That's Belleek.
right, yes,
inviting, comfortable, homely, come make yourself at home.
So you've USB pens inside here?
There's two inside this section here, and they're vacuum packed and sealed inside.
You do realise by the time they're opened in, say, 100 years' time, that'll be ancient technology, isn't that the case?
It will be, but hopefully...
You have to go to another museum to get a computer to read them, you know?
I know, but hopefully they'll still be able to access it.
So no actual objects or newspapers or anything like that?
No pound coins shoved down underneath the cushions.
That would be a good one to put down,
absolutely.
Actually. But it really is brilliant. I know I looked at it last night when I walked past here, and I see that somebody has done a really nice clean-up job on it, because where you have it right under this tree, right, the birds are very fond of it as
absolutely,
well, and they kept blessing it.
They
and
did.
Just where you were sitting now last night.
Absolutely, it's been scrubbed since.
It's been scrubbed since. No.
Yes, we give it a wee bit of a makeover last night.
But that's the point, isn't it? It's out and out in the open, and whatever happens to it, happens to it. It's very, very durable.
It is, yes, and we just want as many people to come and enjoy it.
Yeah.
We did actually have a couple of people who wanted to acquire it, but I think it was more to put it in their living room than in their garden.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Somebody tried to steal it?
Yeah, they pulled up in their white transit van, and they decided that maybe that we were going to put it in the back, but when they jumped out and they realised it was made of stone.
And it weighs what?
It weighs about 3 tonne, and it's concreted in, so hopefully it won't be going anywhere soon.
You probably had curtains to match it and everything, you know, and it must be disappointing.
Watch this space. Watch this space.
So, having been welcomed to Belleek in a way that perhaps offsets the formality of that much larger stone creation across the way, I'm now free to sample the rest of it. But before we explore the recesses of this building, there's another building I'd like to set eyes on that once had a very strong connection to Belleek pottery. Earlier, I mentioned 3 men who were responsible for founding the pottery. Well, the man who had the original idea was John Caldwell Bloomfield, and a few miles east of Belleek was his place in the country, Castle Caldwell. Nowadays, the estate is a forest and nature reserve, but the legend is that Bloomfield one day espied a particularly smooth white finish on one of the estate workers' cottages. On further investigation, he found rich deposits of kaolin and feldspar in the area, essential ingredients of the fine porcelain that would one day bring glory to Belleek and, it could be argued, penury to himself. Now you might wonder why in a forest of beautiful trees I'm paying such attention to this particular clump. Well, the clue is in those little spaces near the top of the canopy through which you can see some daylight, because they're actually windows. And this entire huge big clump of very tall trees is in fact all that remains, or all that you can see, of Castle Caldwell. Underneath all this ivy and other vegetation, the castle may still resemble itself in its heyday. The Caldwells were reputedly benevolent and philanthropic landlords, and John Caldwell Bloomfield certainly worked tirelessly using the raw materials he had discovered to try to bring industry and skilled employment to an area that had just recently emerged from the privations of the famine. In the process, he did nothing to improve his own fortunes and died impoverished in the year 1897. Without him, there would have been no Belleek pottery. The rest of the story, and those of the other founders, when we come back. At the top of the main street in Belleek, the Catholic Church and the Church of Ireland stand shoulder to shoulder, overlooking the town both literally and in spirit. In the graveyard of the Church of Ireland, there's a Masonic broken pillar. a monument marking the grave of Robert Williams Armstrong, one of the founders and the first manager of Belleek Pottery Works. He, along with John Caldwell Bloomfield and a Dublin businessman called David McBurney, pooled their considerable energies, talents and of course money to establish the whole enterprise of Belleek. All three had strong ties to the church, and in 2009 the Reverend Noel Regan, who was then rector of the church, unveiled a new east window which is actually, besides being a beautiful work in its own right, a wonderful weave of historical and religious symbolism. It was created by stained glass artist David Esler at the behest of Noel Regan, without whom this church would have had no east window.
We decided for the bicentenary of this building that we would put in a stained glass window. Well, I had this idea that we'd do something like this, that it was worthy of it, and that we would in some way tell the story of the village of Belleek, and that it would be owned by the village, that the people of the village and the locality could take ownership of this window and feel proud of it, that it was their window.
So you were here for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
At what stage during the 4.5 years did you say, I'm going to do this, I have this kind of scheme or dream in my head? Was it last minute or was it earlier on in your career here in the village? Can you remember?
I do, actually.
Right?
The night of my introduction here.
The very first night?
The very first night I said, this place needs an east window.
Yes.
But I had no idea at that stage what was going to be on it.
Right.
And I remember thinking, it needs something to make it churchy.
Yes.
And that was sort of the start of it. So the bicentenary took place, was coming up, and I knew it was a date that was worthy of mention and celebrating.
Yeah.
And so the arch was built and the chancel built out, and the window installed.
The artist is David Esler, is that it?
David Esler of Lead Line Glass in Belfast.
Okay. Now, he didn't have a free hand, because I would suspect that you were all over this with ideas and say you must include this, you must include that, and I'm sure he was very grateful for a lot of the input that you had.
He probably found I was a botheration too. You know. But
it's a very busy window.
It is, yes.
And even though it depicts what you would describe as the industrial history of the village, it's inspired by a lot of biblical references as well. Is that the case?
Yeah. It's based on passages from Jeremiah. Arise and go down to the potter's house. On the left-hand side you have the pottery there, and the work that went on there. And then on the right-hand side you have the little church here with Armstrong's grave at the back, the broken pillar. Yeah. And there, the inscription there is, "There I will cause thee to hear my word." And of course at the top you have the divine potter. Like the clay in the hands of the potter, so are you in my hands, which reminds us of the fact that we are being moulded throughout our lives, and the pressure is applied by the potter, it's released, and that happens to us in life. You know, there's the good times, the bad times, and that all moulds us in some way.
Right. So there was a kind of a neat kind of joining together.
There was, yes.
Of these two themes. One is the history of the pottery and the ground, and the other one is really, I suppose, the religious aspect of the window itself as well.
Okay, I mean, yes, there's a lot of, yes, I hate to say this, but yes, there's a lot of me there.
I don't know why you'd hate to say that, because without you it wouldn't have been done. Let's face it, don't be modest about it, right? But I do think that it's a wonderful piece of representation for a start off, because you have so much in it. As you say, you have the church and Armstrong's grave.
Yes.
Down in this corner, you have then depicted people working along and sort of
the signets,
along the bench. You then have what looks like a water wheel. Is that correct?
That's one of the water wheels. You see, you have the old bridge, which was the original bridge here in Belleek, which would have been built by the Caldwells of Castle Caldwell.
Right.
And because they own the village. But if you see at the back of the bridge there are the sluice gates.
Right.
And when they were built 150 years ago, they were the largest in the world.
In the world?
In the world, yes. And they remain so for quite a number of years, I think maybe up to 70 years.
Right.
So it just gives you an indication of how progressive these people were, and what the confidence they had in what they were doing.
Well, that's